Is Zwift racing going to improve your FTP? That's what we're going to answer today. Someone the other week wrote a little comment on my YouTube basically saying this: is doing Zwift racing going to help improve your fitness and ultimately increase your FTP? Let's get stuck into this one, guys, and we're going to look at it from a few different ways. You guys know how much I love a Zwift race, and I bang on all the time about how I started Zwift racing around March 2023. I went from Cat C to Cat B towards the end of September, and we're now in December. So we're going to look at two things today. My first thing we're going to look at is an FTP test. When we're going to do a ramp test. Then the second thing we're going to look at is when I finally break the 50-minute mark going up Alpe du Zwift. None of this, in my opinion, would have been possible if I hadn't been taking part in Zwift races and using that, and this is the important thing, guys, using that as part of my training. So ultimately, will Zwift racing make you faster, or does it improve your FTP? Yes, but I also try and use it within the construct of a training program. So ultimately, a Zwift race for me will constitute an interval session or a tempo session depending on how that race goes. That's the important thing. Let's get stuck in and let's check out the first thing we're going to look at, which is a very quick review of my FTP ramp test. Right, guys, I just want to start by saying that this was filmed on Christmas Eve, so that's why there is a Christmas jumper, but that also gives you an idea relative to when you see some of my other results that I show you a little bit later. Let's kick things off first with my Zwift power stats. You can see here that my 20-minute power is 285, which puts my Zwift FTP at 264. So this was way back when I kind of not first started, because you can see that I've done quite a few levels on Zwift, but still it was in the early days. This then improves to my 20-minute power, then goes up to 296, which gives me a 278 Zwift FTP. And that's Zwift itself working out my FTP. So I'm just showing you the progression that I've gone through whilst I kind of work through the little warm-up stages of my Zwift ramp test. Then on the next one, my actual 20-minute power doesn't change. It's still 296. But my Zwift FTP goes from 278 up to 288, which is actually where it is still at now, given that I have also done this 49-48 Alpe du Zwift effort that I will talk you through in a minute. But finally, in this last one, you'll see that my 20-minute power goes from 296 up to 300 watts, and that's what changed when I did my latest Zwift Alpe du Zwift effort. So there you go, you can see the progression. Most of this has come about from doing Zwift racing. It's been my kind of holy grail of training methodology. At the moment is always just trying to go hard and join in some of the tougher Zwift races that really push me to work incredibly hard. So we're going to dive into the tougher part of my Zwift FTP ramp test. As mentioned, this is Boxing Day. I've included my 303 FTP test from August. I've included my 311 FTP test from October. And obviously this is the 24th of December. Last thing I will say is I actually got the flu. So 2 days after this, I went down. I couldn't get out of bed for about 3-4 days. And I did feel like it was impacting me when I was doing this particular session. The other thing to be aware of is heart rates are all so identically similar, which I think is crazy. I think that's really cool. I'm kind of happy that I'm geeky enough to record my Zwift FTP tests. As geeky as it is, it does kind of make me think how much I actually enjoy it now, because I can go back and look over this data. The one thing you will notice is progressively my cadence comes down. So my 303 cadence is just super high, and you see me ramp that up, especially when it gets to the point where I'm struggling, which is actually soon. So my 303 FTP test will actually end quite soon, but you can see my cadence gets ramped up. On my October test, my cadence is reasonably similar, but I will actually just say that I think the reason my cadence is lowest on the latest one, the Christmas Day one, the Christmas Eve one, is actually because I was ill and I was struggling, and I definitely found that. That's what kind of my sensation was. I actually didn't find from a perceived effort point of view, I didn't find this test horrible. It was hard, but it wasn't horrible. I just felt that my legs wouldn't turn over. I didn't have any leg strength, and lo and behold, 2 days later, I'm in kind of bed with real achy body and chills. But I thought it was a great way to just explain, or for you guys to see how my FTP has actually improved, and my heart rate staying pretty similar, but my cadence has been the thing that has changed the most. So guys, that's it. 3:11 again on Boxing Day. I'll see you guys in a sec. So even though my FTP ramp test wasn't the result that I was quite looking for, I can definitely chalk it up to not feeling 100%, or certainly ended up getting ill a few days afterwards, and maybe that's something that I chatted about whilst doing it. But I did my FTP test, and then 2 days later I ended up with the flu, and I've been ill for a week, which is not ideal. Right, the big thing that I want to look at is my Alpe du Zwift effort and finally going under 50 minutes, and we're going to break that down for you in a second. It took a lot of effort, and then I have done a video on this before that you might want to kind of check out, and in that I kind of detail a little bit more about what kind of wattage I have to hold given that my weight, or what my weight is, which is 76.3, 76.4 kg, and I detail that in the other video. But ultimately I have to get pretty close to 4 watts per kg for the time that it takes me to get up the Alp. So if I do it in under 50 minutes, that roughly creates an FTP that isn't altogether too far from 4 watts per kg, which is ultimately my goal for 2023. So here we go. Final thing we're going to look at today is my Alpe du Zwift effort. And guys, honestly, the finish on this is insane, because I didn't think I was going to make it, and then I creep under the 50-minute mark. So if you do nothing else, just scrub through to that final sprint, making up the Alp. So guys, let's get stuck into the Alpe du Zwift effort. I'm using this as a bit of a representative effort of basically doing a hard 60-minute session, which I think is what a lot of people like to base kind of an FTP off of. Obviously, I haven't really done a huge amount of kind of sprint work or fatigue work before heading up here, but still, nonetheless, I'm still trying to hold 4 watts per kg for an effort up the Alp. So I do actually this time have my Ghost, and if you look on the right there, he is kind of listed as riding 51 minutes 11 seconds. So I was going to have to take off 71 seconds off my effort and try and get 71 seconds ahead of him prior to heading up the Alp. Now, I do from memory remember the time that I did 51:11 that I went out quite hard. So I knew that I wasn't going to try and push too far ahead of him, specifically on these early stages. And then if I throw up a quick diagram, you'll be able to see that I basically went out hard through the first maybe 5 or 6 bends, and then it kind of chills out a little bit. And to give you a bit more detail, guys, I have actually done a YouTube video when I did this effort. I do have 2 meltdowns when I do this effort. So I was going to try and factor those into my riding for this time, so I knew I didn't have to get too far ahead of him, or my previous effort, my Ghost, didn't have to be too far ahead of him, because I knew that at some stages he was basically going to stall and stop, and that would give me like 10, 15, 20 seconds maybe. My second meltdown that I have on my previous attempt is mega, and that's the one that really kind of lets me kick on a little bit. I'll also say that, guys, the finish on this one is the absolute thing that makes the whole effort just so incredible, and I'm really kind of impressed and proud of it. So my full wattage for my ride up Alpe du Zwift is quoted as 296 watts for the whole ride. That's 49 minutes and 48 seconds, 49 seconds, which I think is pretty good going. But you can see for the first even 9 minutes, just about to hit 9 minutes, I'm no further ahead, or I'm basically exactly on my previous efforts attempt. So obviously, I don't want to say I went out too hard, but guys, I think I might have gone out a little bit too hard. So my average wattage that I'm trying to hold is around the 308 to the 310. That's what's basically going to kind of get me under the 50-minute mark based on my calculations. My watts for the first few corners, I hold 330 for the first one, 315, 320, 300, 304, 310. So you can see just how hard that my previous attempt and this attempt is having to go out. Some of the big differences are this time is you can see me getting up out the saddle. My ability to do that and hold that has come on such a long way. When I actually recorded this was a while ago. So or not a while ago, obviously within December, but it was a few weeks ago, so I wasn't struggling with any sort of illness and everything was going very well. And you'll also notice that I only really ever get 4 or 5 seconds ahead of my previous effort, if you look on the right, which kind of in some senses was worrying me a little bit. Someone basically, especially as we're heading up to corner 10, I thought that maybe I might have been able to sneak a few more seconds, bearing in mind 71 seconds, kind of like, I don't know whether it sounds like a lot, but it feels like a hell of a lot, especially when you're riding and you're only seeing that you're 4 or 5 seconds ahead at any point. You're like, well, how am I going to get this extra kind of 70 odd seconds? Where are they actually going to come from? I know that I do have a couple of meltdowns, but they don't last too long. They're like small little breaks that I get to have later in the ride that just kind of I knew I was going to be able to capitalize on. So we're going to dive into the first time that I actually put some distance between myself and my previous time. So just bear in mind that we're 5, 6 seconds ahead. Now, this was the first meltdown that we have, and I was able to capitalize on it by kicking on. And it's at this point I'm probably going to just throw in my Zwift power or my Zwift stats on my 2-minute power, my 5-minute power, and you'll basically see that this ride up the Alp, I reset my 3-minute power and I reset my 5-minute power PRs, but things like my slightly longer powers, like my 20 minutes, my 30 minutes, were actually done during my previous effort, or I think they were basically exactly the same, and I think that's why it doesn't kind of necessarily update. But certainly my 3 and my 5-minute power improved off the back of this ride specifically. You can see here that this is the point when my first meltdown happens on my previous attempt, and I just make the most of it and start nudging up, and I get 18 seconds. So I'm now within the 60-second mark of being able to finish Alpe du Zwift in under 50 minutes. And that's completely the goal. And things were kind of going all right. And I'm not going to bang on about cadence or heart rate too much. I guess like when it comes to these all-out efforts, it's quite simply just about kind of holding on, and that's all I was trying to do. But as with any good effort up the Alp, and if you are trying to kind of test yourself, this is actually the point where things start going a little bit wrong. You may notice that I'm now only 16 seconds ahead, and as with every attempt up the Alp, especially if you were trying to kind of push your limits, shall we say, I have a meltdown. There it is. I completely stop. I'm like, this is like, I actually genuinely felt like giving up and not carrying on. We are 32 minutes in. I look up and I was like, I still got 20 minutes to go. I don't want to do this. This is horrible. I don't want to do it. Luckily, I kind of convinced myself to keep moving. I don't know why. I don't know why I actually carried on, because I felt like, oh God, this is enough. I've gone too hard. I'm doing too much. But I give up the 8 seconds. Basically half of the lead that I've built up over my previous time is now gone, because I was kind of like questioning whether I still want to do this when I saw that there was still 20 minutes to go. And I have to say that this is probably the worst part of the climb, kind of that when you hit that kind of 30-minute mark, because it's horrible. You just know how you still have quite a long time to go. But yeah, I kind of managed to get my mind back in the game, and then just about managed to keep moving. So we're getting closer to the top, and if you can see, Alpe du Zwift, 44 minutes and 30 seconds, so I have just under 6 minutes to make it to the top. This is when things get really tight. I also know that this is the point where my previous attempt, I have a complete meltdown. I stop for a little bit, I cramp really badly, and then I start moving again. I start noticing that the clock on the bottom right, in terms of how far ahead of I am, starts increasing. It's now 22 seconds, 23 seconds. I think I get to about 24, 25 seconds. And I'm like, well, that's really good. But that's still not 70 odd seconds that I need to go under 50 minutes. So I'm still kind of wondering, am I going to make it under 5 minutes to go? Still quite a lot left of this climb. I just kind of was hoping that at this stage I'd be like 45, 50 seconds ahead, and then I'd kind of be a bit more comfortable knowing that I was going to make it. But at this stage, I'm still just not 100% sure. So then we get to what is effectively the last 3 and a bit minutes. And this is when all hell breaks loose. At this stage, I'm still kind of not entirely sure whether I'm going to make it or not going to make it, when either way, it's going to be incredibly close. I'm still only 22 seconds ahead of my previous time, 23 seconds, when I actually need to be significantly more than that. We're basically coming into, or this is now the final straight, and I'm basically, okay, I don't think I'm going to make it. Based on only being 26 seconds ahead, you know, that's still another 48 seconds or something like that I need to beat my previous time point by. I need to add that on. I need to improve by that. But nonetheless, I start digging in a little bit and start holding the watts. Now, one thing does change, and I didn't actually realize that this happened. It was quite fortuitous. I'm now 30 seconds ahead, so I am kind of moving a little bit quicker, but I still need to find 40 seconds. The thing that changes is that suddenly you get a little notification on the top of the screen that basically says an estimated arrival time. And we are under 2 minutes now. We've got 1 minute, 40 seconds. And then I get the ETA that says 50 minutes and 1 second, 2 seconds. And I'm like, do you know what? Damn, like all I've got to do is work harder and I can do this. So this is where it begins. This is the kick. This is everything. And I'll say that my GoPro actually runs out of battery in a second, which I'm so lucky it made it this far, but I hammer it. This is all I have. This is everything I have. Bear in mind that I wanted to quit a while ago. This is everything I have to empty the tank. I'm up out the saddle, and I think this is the main benefit of having improved as a cyclist, is my ability to do this now at the end of what is a 50-minute effort. My ETA time suddenly just creeps under the 50-minute mark. I keep the watts on. I hammer it down. On my previous attempt, this is not something I did. I just kind of cycled up to the finish line, knowing that that would give me a few seconds if I was racing my avatar the next time, and that's exactly what happened. So my video runs out. I've still got the watts on. I realize I'm just about to make it. Keep the little kick in, guys. And there we go. My 48 second Alpe du Zwift effort. Right, guys. See you in a sec. Hopefully this has been useful to you guys. If you can kind of incorporate some Zwift racing into your training program, usually for me, I like to race early in the week, so a Monday, Tuesday night, or I do a Monday and then a Wednesday. I try not to race on consecutive days, but lo and behold, sometimes it does happen. If you incorporate these races into a larger training program, I find they're absolutely fantastic for just pushing me beyond like a level that I can sometimes do within a training session. And I use these as my like interval sessions. Sometimes races don't always pan out how you want, and when I was progressing to get to where I am, I spent a lot of time falling off the group, which basically meant I was doing a hard, let's say, 10, 15, 20 minute just tempo session to try and stay on the group. Now that my fitness has improved, these sessions are now being a bit more orientated towards intervals. So I'll do like 2 or 3 minutes when the group pushes on and something happens in the race where we push really hard. And even every now and again, I'll even dive into a race and push the pace myself because I want to get a nice session out of it. These are all things that kind of have helped me get to where I am today. So 100% guys, if you are looking to improve your FTP, try and factor in at least one Zwift race. And then if you depends what you want to get out of it, but sometimes you might have to be the reason that race kicks off, and sometimes you're gonna have to drive your own bus. Anyway guys, I hope that was useful. Drop a comment below of what your Alpe du Zwift time is, and I will see you guys on the next one.